Thank you. All right, this is the Mount Pleasant Public School Board of Education regular meeting agenda on April 5th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. via Zoom. This meeting of the Mount Pleasant Public School Board of Education is a meeting conducted in public, but is not a meeting of the public. There is a time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. The purpose of today's meeting is to conduct regular business that requires action by the board. These items may include those items discussed at previous meetings or presented to the board for discussion tonight. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, I'd like to read the Indigenous Land Acknowledgement Statement. Mount Pleasant Public Schools is honored to acknowledge the Anishinaabe people whose traditional lands we are gathered on today. To recognize the Anishinaabe people and their ancestral land is our expression of gratitude and appreciation and a way of honoring the Indigenous people who have been living and working on this land since time immemorial and whose land on which the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe have resided and who have continued to reside on for centuries. We feel it is important to understand the long-standing history of this land and to seek to understand our place within its history. Next is roll call, and Tim, I believe you're going to do that.
Ela Murphy.
Here.
Amy Bond.
Here.
Wileen Pangle.
Here.
Dana Calkins.
Here.
Jessica Jernigan. Courtney Stegman. Tim Odekirk, here.
Next is the approval of the agenda. Is there any changes? I'd like to make one potential change and just ask Jen if she could make a COVID update for the community and the schools after the board meeting format discussion.
Yes, I would be happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. So next, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, everyone. We have with us this evening 3 representatives from Southwest Food Service Excellence for our annual food service presentation. So Stephen, Josh, and Jason, thank you all for being with us today. I will let you all introduce yourselves and I will share my screen with your presentation.
So thank you. I'm Stephen West. I'm the food service director acting in Mount Pleasant with Southwest.
And I'm Jason Funnell. I am the district chef for Mount Pleasant Public Schools with Southwest Food Service.
And then I'm Josh Bain. I'm the director of area operations for SFE. So I oversee the state of Michigan for us.
Okay, so tonight we did just want to review a few topics. Obviously, a few of those more in the forefront than others with the COVID-19 and our feeding. But we wanted to go over our food service staff, our feeding and COVID-19, participation and revenue year over year from last year to this year, our allergy and meal program, our hybrid feeding model, and looking forward for the food service program. So the first thing I wanted to say is that, I really see our food service staff as heroes. They all served admirably throughout the pandemic. I just asked a lot of our food service workers who could work when we had to go into emergency feeding back in March. And, we had to do a quick turnaround in 3 days to go from serving regular meals to packaging those up to go out to the kiddos. And because of all their hard work, no positions had to be eliminated. We didn't even have to cut any hours of our employees. And I just thought that was a testament to how hard they work to feed the community. So an overview of our current staff right now in Mount Pleasant is that we have 2 managers, including Jason and myself. We have 1 admin, Brittany Hamp, who works in the central kitchen with us, 8 kitchen managers, each located at all the schools, and 18 food service assistants. And then all of the staff who worked through the summer months did receive a hero bonus from SFE as a thank you for their hard work. So currently we are able to provide 7 days of breakfast and lunch since school closed in March. Weekly meals served have climbed consistently since that March initial closure. We actually saw a little bit of a dip in August, which we'll see in a couple of the charts, but then we've climbed right back into it as we got into more face-to-face learning. So we did have multiple partnerships that helped us definitely during the summer months. We had Arnold Farms, the Strickler Center, Lay's actually donated quite a bit of chips to us to hand out to some kiddos. We also had Cisco donate a lot of produce, which you see some of it here with the Arnold Farms table. And then the community engagement through social media. Mount Pleasant Public Schools is one of the more well-known distribution sites. We saw a lot of kids coming even from Alma, Shepherd, Claire, to come to our distribution sites throughout the summer and even now as we got through the winter months. So I think that's a real testament to just how engaged the community was in getting the word out there. So we can see this is just year over year, looking at the changes that we saw. We can definitely see a dip in the participation rates, which was to be expected with all of our virtual students that are now online. We have been able to make up that gap. You can see in January and February, we're starting to close that gap again, which I think is, that's just another great testament to that. Getting the kids back into the school, getting them able to sit down and have that meal with each other again. Okay, and then this is actually the revenue. So although we can see, and I don't know why it's not showing up on my screen, but you can see that the revenue from 2019 to 2020 has definitely took a hit to the pandemic. But with the students returning to school, we've been able to meet or beat our revenue from last year. So especially in that December, January, February timeline, we were able to actually exceed our revenue standpoint from last year, which was a really good win for us in the district. And we also just in the participation in revenue, we have received a grant of $10,000 from the state for fresh produce that we get. It's called the 10 cent a meal grant. So for every all of the local produce that we buy, we actually get a check from the state to support those local farms. And then even during the pandemic, we've been able to serve students year round through our strict COVID policies and protocol. We did have one instance of a COVID issue, and we were able to, through all of our COVID policies and protocols, we didn't have to stop serving even through the November, December months because of that. So our community feedback, we like to do 2 surveys a year to the students and to parents. And students and parents were surveyed this October. We're also going to be surveying them in May. We did receive 147 responses from the parents and students. And due to that, we have changed our meal distribution program. So initially we were serving every single day of the week. We had the online pickup outside after the normal lunch service at the high school and at Ganyard. But because of parent feedback saying that it was just too difficult to get there every day, we actually switched to, they were able to pick up every Wednesday, and then they were able to take all 7 days worth of food home at one time. And then, like I said, we do have another survey going out in May, as we are planning to do this distribution program through the summer all the way into September, and as long as the state will allow, to make sure that everyone who needs to be fed does get fed. So just our hybrid model from the food service standpoint is the middle school is a grab and go model right now with that half day. They do get 3 choices that are tailored to be easily reheated or eaten cold for the longer bus rides home. That was also a part of the surveys that we had taken before, and also talking to the principals at the middle school. Our high school still has 5 options for meals each day. We have prepackaged grab-and-go wraps and salads with rotating stations of hot meals. So we like to do 3 hot stations a day, and then we let them choose from 2 cold, prepackaged, clamshelled meals that they can pick from. In the elementary schools, just like last year, they still have those 2 entree options and 1 vegetable option a day. We do have the 3 fruit choices. Now, in lieu of the salad bar to COVID-19, obviously we couldn't do the salad bar this year because that's a common touch area. We are trying to offer more fruit choices to the children so that they can still have some kind of a choice in what meals they're getting. And then, like we said before with our COVID-19, we're doing the meal distribution Wednesdays, and that's 7 days of meals a week. And then our dietary focus. Each year, we are very diligent to cater to the needs of all students, dietary restrictions, and work with parents and students to find options that work for them. And most, if not all, of our menu items are able to be altered to adhere to those dietary restrictions, like a lactose intolerance or carbohydrate controlled diets, which we have in a couple of schools. All our allergies are kept on file in the schools and are strictly followed by the food service staff. We also try to make sure we understand, we get to look at those to make sure that we have those filled out and we follow those dietary restrictions, allergy restrictions that are given to us from the doctors. And then we do reach out regularly with school staff if any questions or concerns about the meals come up. So I do have a few staff in the daycare center that we have at Kinney, at Ganyard and at Vowels that will reach out to me if there's a question or concern about calories, ingredients that are in the meals. And if we do find that that isn't okay for the student to have, we always have alternatives that we can send to that student. And just as a note, that was taken pre-pandemic when we were doing one of our roving chef events. And post-pandemic food service in our district, I really want to bring new stations to the high school for even more options to the students. So we offered about 7 last year, and my goal is really to get us to the 8 to 10 mark and just have stations that rotate each day. So one day it might be the Adobe Grill. Next day it might be the Wingin' It Bar, which has definitely been a big hit at the high school right now. We are talking about with possible renovations at the middle school and additions of new stations there as well. We're also trying to bring in a coffee station, sugar-free for the students, to try to offset all those sugary coffee drinks that are coming in from the outside. And we are in the works of getting new line setups at the elementary schools to ensure fresh, hot food all the time. And as always, we thank you guys for your outstanding partnership and look forward to continuing to enhance the health and well-being of Mount Pleasant along with you.
Thank you, Stephen. Do any board members have any questions for Stephen, Josh, or Jason?
I have a quick question. Can you talk a little bit more about how are you envisioning the food distribution for next year? It's been quite successful this year, and thank you for all the work that you've done. Getting food into the hands of children has been fantastic, and you guys have been recognized by the community to me multiple times about what you've done. And so I just want to make sure that we keep that going in the greater community. And has there been any thoughts in maybe leveraging some of the techniques that you're currently doing next year to make sure that the food is reaching out to those students also?
Yeah, I think, and I've talked closely with Jen and Linda and Ginger on this as we talk about our summer food service program going underway here in June, is that we don't want to slow down at all. We still want to keep pushing out that distribution program that we're going to be doing at the high school, all the way throughout, at least until September at this point. And just to, really drive it home, make sure that everybody knows we'll keep doing the Facebook blast, make sure that we're still talking to the community, making sure that teachers know to let their students know. Some word of mouth has actually been really great for us. Some students didn't know how they could get the food, and some teachers have really stepped up in the district to get that to them, to help us get there. So that's been an excellent partnership, and I know that that's really, we're just keep pushing on.
Thank you. And thank you for everything that you've done, and thank your team. The community definitely has benefited from your hard work.
Well, thank you.
We thank you.
Just to quickly add in also, Tim, we will be partnering again with the PEAK program this summer with SFE meals. So that will be another great way for us to get meals out to our community. Any student that's a part of the PEAK program will be eligible for those summer meals.
I'd like to echo Tim to thank you all for all the hard work, especially in the challenges that we had. I have a general question for you guys. Is there anything we can do to help you guys in some ways? Things that we should know, any help that you would need that we might not be aware of?
I think the biggest thing for us right now is just trying to get the word of mouth out there still. When we change from, school to summer, or we even saw at spring break a dip in participation, we really do try to reach out as much as possible to let parents know, let students know, hey, we're still here, we're still serving, so please come get these meals, they're here for you. So any way we can do to just get that word out there, to let them know that even though school's ending, even though it might be a summer break, that we're still here to serve you through this. I think that's the biggest thing right now.
Yeah.
I think there was some concern last summer too that if a family came and got meals, then other families might not, who are more in need, might not have enough meals. Could you just talk about how many meals that you are putting out there and making sure that anyone who wants to come and get food can?
Yeah, definitely. So at our peak, we were serving 1,200 meals a day. And we had room to do so much more. And that's the biggest thing. We always, especially during that time, we were making sure we had more than enough food coming in on our trucks to make sure that if more children came, that we were able to serve them. There were plenty of times when we may not have had it prepped and ready for them, but we didn't let somebody leave without getting the meals, right? We would make sure that we were continuously prepping this, continually going. So we always say the more the merrier, right? The more that come, the more that we can serve, and the more that we know to serve. If we don't know that people want the food, we can't make it for them. And I think that's the biggest part of it is, I don't think we've ever, really turned somebody away to say, no, well, we can't serve you this week. It's always been, we've found some way to do that. And so just to not avoid that, right? To come in to ask us, hey, can I come get a meal? We don't want anyone to think, hey, I can't go grab a meal because somebody else might need it, because we have more than enough meals for everybody.
Thank you.
Chef, I love your coat, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
And I know you guys can't do the roving chef events anymore, but from a member of the community before I joined the board, man, were those programs loved. I mean, I heard about it every single time you had one in a building my girls went to. And so that was really awesome. And hopefully we can pick those up again soon when things get better.
Yeah, we hope so as well.
Yeah,
It's a lot of
we'd
fun to
love
get
to.
out there and interact with the kids. They're a lot of fun.
Excellent. Are there any other questions for Stephen, Josh, or Jason? Thank you all very much for joining us this evening. We appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jen.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
The next item under reports and updates is a discussion that I was hoping that we could have with the board regarding our format for meetings moving forward. As you know, the legislation that gave us flexibility with the Open Meetings Act to be able to meet fully virtual did expire at the end of March. And so I think in keeping with what our community needs, we agreed that this meeting would maintain a virtual format. But we do need to discuss for our next meetings moving forward if we want to try to be able to meet face to face, if the board has an opinion on which venue would be a best location across the district. If we try to do a blended format for the meeting or just have in-person participation, whatever you all feel is best. Deb and I will get to work tomorrow morning, putting that together so we can be ready to go for April 19th. But really, it is time that we need to start looking at our format and coming back together in an in-person setting.
I'm definitely in favor of an in-person format. And at the same time, as we've spoken about, we have so much more participation in these meetings, having it be virtual, and I think anything we can do to have a blended is in our best interest. Will serve our population better.
Yeah. My biggest concern with the blended is the quality for those folks that are joining us virtually, because I can work with our digital media program and see if they might be able to help us. But those first couple of meetings that we tried to do, and of course it was over a year ago, so we definitely have learned a lot. The quality for our folks participating virtually was not good. And then we landed on this format with the Zoom webinar that's been much better. But that's my hesitation with the blended format, is just to make sure that we have a true way to have that back and forth interaction. But I agree, Dana, we've definitely had great community participation over the last year. Far better than face-to-face.
I'm wondering if we go to a face-to-face format, if we might be able to do it in a slightly different venue that would allow people, community members who want to attend, to safely feel that they could do that, maybe even in the auditorium at the high school, or something where we could spread out a little bit, they could spread out a little bit, and still participate, especially for those that want to. We'd love to have them.
And that was my thought as far as the location goes, that either we would try to use the Performing Arts Center, or in previous years, we've used the middle school and or the high school cafeteria and had the chairs set up more in like a row format. And so we could space it out so that folks could join us and be socially distanced. There is still a limit to the gathering size. And I believe that that's 100 people right now. And so that, our meeting, like if I look at our meeting attendance this evening, we're around 50 people, but certainly we know over the summer, some of our meetings, had over 250 people at it. So, but I definitely think a larger venue is the right first step. I don't know, what do you all think about the auditorium?
Well, Jen, I have another question.
Yeah.
If we continue the Zoom format, but we gather in a larger place, and where people could come if they so choose, but people could still get on at Zoom. I mean, we could have, our computers right there. We could all be on Zoom just like this, but we could be in a face-to-face setting. And then as many people who wanted to join that way could.
Yep, I agree. I like that.
Jennifer, so if we wanted to stay virtual until the end of the school year, until June, can we? Or do we not have that option?
I don't really believe that we have that option. I think that if we had certain members of our board that needed to be virtual for, a variety of reasons, if that was pre-approved ahead of time, we can do that. But my interpretation of what MASB has said is that we do need to move to a face-to-face format.
And the reason I'm asking is that it seems to be, in a way, like the worst time to do that, because the numbers in the community are increasing exponentially. And so to put all of us in the same room at the same time and ask our community members to join, 2 weeks ago, I might not have that answer, had that feeling, but right now, especially in our county, it's not looking good. And so it does make me nervous.
So I agree with you completely. And right, we know this is an ever-changing situation. So what I could do is work to reserve, if you all think the Performing Arts Center is the best place. The only thing I don't like about the Performing Arts Center is that we would be like on stage, and I like the feel of our boardroom, because it to me feels very approachable, and I think when you have a stage and it just feels a little different. But if that allows us to have the largest group of in-person participation at the board meeting, then we could work on setting that up. And we can follow up with MASB given the changes in our county. I don't know if they would make a county by county determination. Certainly our board members would be spaced 6 feet apart. And, you know, we'd make sure that we maintain that distance for our group here.
I like the auditorium at the high school. I agree with you that the problem with sitting up on a stage, but what I do like about it is the setup, right? So we don't have to have a whole bunch of people rearrange the cafeterias to set up for every meeting, where, you know, rolling some tables on the stage is going to save a precious time of people who could be doing better things. But I do agree with you, having it up on stage is still kind of awkward. But I think the space is going to be the most appropriate. Not only that, but in past experience, most people can find that auditorium, right? And so if we say that we're going to be putting up shop there temporarily, I think people can find it, know where it is, and the parking's adequate, and there's signage and everything. I think there's value to that. I really do hope that we can keep the Zoom structures going. And if you can figure out some ways to do that, whether, like Sheila said, each of us have our computers on and I'm on mute so people can see us up close, or having a large camera that shows everyone, you're gonna have to play with that a little bit. And in the end, we'll have to experiment, right? So the public's gonna have to help us as we're doing this. So we're doing something completely new and different, but I think it's probably good for us to get back to face-to-face. But I agree with Wileen. It's going to be interesting if this continues to escalate. I have a feeling the health department's going to step up at some point. But we need to be prepared because we know eventually this is going to be happening. And so I think if we do some of the work now, I think it would be appropriate.
Okay. So why don't I do this? I will work on reserving the Performing Arts Center. And when I say I probably really mean Deb. We'll work on getting the Performing Arts Center together for our next few meetings. And then I'll work with the technology department to see how we can do the Zoom together. And then worst case scenario, if we end up having to go back to a fully virtual meeting, I mean, this is easy. We know this format, but I definitely wanted to have this discussion in public so that our community knows to look for the next meeting and that the format is changing. I didn't want to just change it without us talking about it here first.
And I would second Tim on that. I think the bigger the space, the better, right? The safer it is. And so even if it's awkward with the stage, less work on people to set up, I think is a big deal. The Zoom in person, I think we can make, we'll just have to be very diligent to remember to mute ourselves. I think we'll be reminded very quickly with the awful noise echo that we're going to get in our face if we don't. It'd be awkward, but I think doable, even I guess a quick fix. If the whatever you guys were doing earlier wasn't working well. And then that way we can offer for people an option to view us from home instead of having to come if they're not comfortable with that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Does anybody have any other comments or questions about the board meeting format?
I'm just wondering, and it's probably a logistical nightmare, so but I feel like I have to put it out there. Is there any type of option of outside? And I mean, I know rain, we're talking about April in Michigan, we could still have snow. Yeah, I mean, there are all fingers crossed, but that is a possibility. I just didn't know if in the stadium or, you know, something to allow people to come to feel safe if they wanted to. So I didn't know if that would be an option, but again, logistical nightmare, I get it, so.
I mean, the stadium probably would be our best option. I don't know that we have any covered outdoor spaces that would be big enough unless we tried to do a pavilion at a park, which I'm sure, you know, I could work with the city to reserve something like that if you thought that would be worthy of trying.
It'd be safer for sure.
But on the other hand, I don't think it would be large enough. So I'll never forget driving home one evening in Shepherd Public Schools trying to have a board meeting under a pavilion, and a rainstorm came and hundreds of people had to cram underneath the shelter. I'd rather have it more predictable and safer. Outside, I agree, but I don't think that's logistically going to happen. But I'd also like to make sure the public understands that there are still rules on how many people can be in a room, no matter the size of the room. And so there would have to be some limits in understanding that if you came later, there would be a chance that you may not be allowed to be in. And that's something else we would have to figure out is, someone who's the counter to be seeing, make sure that we're following those protocols.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll get to work on this and then I can continue to update you and update our community as we move forward. But I think I just, most importantly, we want to make sure that everyone's sort of on notice that for the April 19th meeting, our meeting format has to change unless something else changes, right? So it has to change until it doesn't, I guess. Okay, so speaking of that, I will give you an update, as Amy mentioned, on what's happening with our COVID situations. I know that this has been a very stressful, I'm going to say last 5 days in the Mount Pleasant community with our numbers really rapidly increasing. I do have to give a lot of credit to our two key COVID team members, Tammy Carrier and Heather Prevost. They literally have knocked it out of the park with all the work that they have done while they were both on spring break over the weekend, contacting families. Our cases, today was a busy day as we expected it would be, but our cases are not astronomical. Currently, I'll just give you a rundown of where we were when I last met with our team at about 5 o'clock this afternoon. We do have one positive staff member. We have one staff member in quarantine who was exposed and has not yet been vaccinated. So our other staff members that were exposed have been vaccinated. So they've provided proof of their vaccine to the Human Resources Office, so they do not have to quarantine. That's a major difference. I think that's important for our community to remember that now we're at a point where just under 70% of our staff have been fully vaccinated. So several months ago when we went virtual, no one had been vaccinated. So that's a huge difference for us. We do have 8 students that have tested positive for COVID-19. That's since March 30th through today. So 8 students district-wide. 3 students are in the Oilers Online program, so they would never step foot in any building anyway. We have 4 students that attend Mount Pleasant High School who have tested positive, and 1 student that attends Pullen Elementary that tested positive. In addition to those cases, we have between 30 to 35 students that will be quarantined because of their exposure. And that's a range because Heather Prevost is still working and following up with some students. Actually, as our board meeting was starting, she was still reporting out with some families. So we're going to be right around that 30 to 35 range for students in quarantine today. That's what we know today. I know that this situation changes very quickly. I know that our community is on edge. I work closely with folks from the Central Michigan District Health Department, also local healthcare providers, to find out who they're testing. Are they testing K-12 students? Are they testing families? Are they testing college students? That seems to be the big unknown right now. We know that cases are increasing in our community, but we really don't know if it's solely a CMU situation or if it's more cross-section of our community. You all know this, but I do also work very closely with the Central Michigan District Health Department and Dr. Morris. I met with them last Thursday afternoon. At that time, they were aware of the increase in our community. They were still recommending that we continue with face-to-face instruction. Their perspective is that if you believe that your cases have turned a corner where they're interrupting your day-to-day operations, then you look at what you can scale back on, and you scale back on your riskiest activities first. So the example for our district would be if we felt like we had a situation that we couldn't control, would we scale back on athletics? Would we scale back on face-to-face instruction? What would we do to put ourselves in a situation where we can control it better? At this point, I don't see that we need to change anything. This is what I know of as of April 5th at 7 o'clock. At 9 o'clock tonight, I could find out additional information that might change my stance. but right now, this is where I believe that we are. I did reach out this afternoon after the Morning Sun article was sent out. I did reach out this afternoon to Dr. Morris. I've not heard back from her yet, but I do anticipate that I will by early tomorrow. She's typically quite fast. My questions to her are, does she have any different guidance for me today than she did last Thursday? Are there anything else that we should be doing? And you know, how do we continue to move forward? As you all know, we hosted a pop-up testing clinic on Sunday. We have another one that we're hosting on Wednesday. Sunday, just under 200 people in our community were tested for COVID-19. I'll ask Amy to share her experiences here in a minute, but so we know that we're providing that service. More tests are a good thing, but we all also know that with more tests, there's more positive cases, right? So we want to make sure that we have that option for our community members. I think the other thing that's important to note is that since we've talked about this the CDC did come out and say that desks could be positioned 3 feet apart. And our question, of course, to that change in protocol is, you know, is there a difference then in what defines a close contact? Because if we're putting desks 3 feet apart, then we're instantly making all of our students a close contact if there's an exposure. And so the definition of what is a close contact has not changed. It's still 6 feet for more than 15 minutes. And so we didn't make any adjustments with how our desks are set up. So if you remember from our last Return to Learn presentation, our desks are, for the most part, between 4 to 5 feet. They're 6 feet when we can be, and in some very small circumstances, they're 3 to 4 feet. But our goal is always to have as much space as possible between our desks, and we've not changed that. So some of the things that the CDC changes and puts in into their practices we're able to do. In my opinion, this is not one that we want to make an adjustment to our seating at this point. So we did not do that. So I know I've said sort of a lot all at once. Amy, do you want to just briefly share your experiences with the pop-up testing clinic?
Sure. So my family went to the pop-up testing clinic yesterday. We were really fortunate. I had heard there had been some lines earlier in the day, but we were able to get in quite quickly. I do recommend, if you go to the one on Wednesday, to pre-register. It cuts down on time quite a bit. It's very easy to do. Just a couple of clicks, name entering, email, phone number, and that type of information. Do one for each of the family members that you're having tested. You drive right up. You never have to get out of your car. You slide your mask down. They use the swab. They tell you that it'll be 20 to 30 minutes that they're letting you know your answers, and you drive off. So you don't have to wait during that time. You receive a text or an email depending on how you want to be notified. So I had the results within about 25 minutes for my whole family, and it was very easy, and it gave us peace of mind coming back to school today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Do you all have questions about our COVID situations or things that you'd like to know that I wasn't able to share this evening or haven't shared yet this evening?
Jen, I'm just wondering, because you've done such a wonderful job getting information to the family. So let's say there is a change in information at 9 o'clock tonight or anything like that. Should families continue to check their email? Will they receive a letter the same way that they have been if there is any changes?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we were to make a major change, like a move to virtual instruction, which is really what we're trying to avoid here, we would definitely send Power School announcement, check your email, text alerts, all those kinds of things so that parents knew what was going on. I do owe our parents a letter with these cases and this update, but I was waiting for our team to work up all the cases today. So I will be sending out a COVID letter similar to the ones I've sent out all year to families tomorrow. But yeah, definitely we would let them know right away. And it might be a situation, I mean, I think the population that we're most worried about is our high school age students, right? So it might be a situation where it's one building over another. But if we can keep kids in school as long as possible, you know, that remains our goal, to keep them face to face with our teachers. So we hope that we can continue to do that. I feel like our families have done a wonderful job too of letting us know who's been exposed. I think that, you know, the challenging part is we don't always know when we've been exposed. And so sometimes we carry on not knowing, and then that's when we run into a situation. But by and large, our parents have been fabulous to work with, to let us know what's going on and to help us, determine the timeline for return and those kinds of things.
So Jen, parents should still be letting the school know, even if they were on spring break, got it while they were on spring break, have not set foot back in the building. It is still important that they're contacting you and letting you know about, or the team, I should say.
Yep, absolutely.
Letting someone know.
Yep, we need to know, so they can either contact a COVID team member, they can contact their building office, who will get them in touch. But yes, even if they know that they've not stepped foot in our building, there are no close contacts, or even like for 3 of the students that were reported to us, they're Oilers Online students, so they haven't been in our buildings all year, but we still need to know. Some of our Oiler Online students participate in extracurricular activities. We just want to make sure that we're managing that for our entire population as much as possible.
I kind of have a similar question for you, Jen. What if you're a parent that, all of a sudden you don't feel comfortable sending your kids to school right now with the rising numbers in the community and knowing that the new variants are much more contagious? Can they change on, let's say tonight decide, can we switch to virtual? Is it easy for them to do? Is there a procedure?
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to my favorite answer of it. That all depends. And I would say I definitely understand parents feeling those concerns and that frustration. I would encourage them to contact the school office so we can see what accommodations can be made for them. So I can't guarantee like, yes, absolutely, we can move you to a different program, but depending on the situation and the student, if we can easily do that, we would make those accommodations.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, if there aren't any other questions, that is the end of our reports and updates section.
Thank you very much. Okay, so next is correspondence. I'd just like to take a second and acknowledge that the board has had and read an email from Dr. Norma Bailey, and we would like to make an acknowledgement of that. Next, we are moving on to the consent agenda. So first off would be for the consent items is the approval of minutes from the March 15th, 2021 regular meeting minutes. Was there any changes that needed to be made to that? Okay, Tim, would you mind doing roll call? Or sorry, we have to do.
So moved to accept.
Thank you, Sheila.
No problem.
I second.
So Sheila and then Wheeleen.
Sheila Murphy,
Yes.
Amy Bond,
Yes.
Wileen Pangle,
Yes.
Dana Calkins,
Yes.
Jessica Jurgen, Courtney Stegman, Tim Odekirk, yes.
That unanimously passes. Next is new business, starting with retirement.
Good evening. Seems like just yesterday we were bringing Kathy Schaefer to the board to promote her to be our transportation director after being a driver many years. And at that time, I think we shared that Kathy started out as a crossing guard and then a paraprofessional. Eventually, she became a driver with us for lots of years. And then the last few years, she has done a great job of taking over our transportation department. And I think Kathy is on tonight, but we would like the board to recognize her retirement with best wishes for her future.
Is there an approval for her retirement, for Kathy Schaefer's retirement?
Tim Odekirk.
Second.
So Tim and then Sheila. Okay, Tim, if you could do roll call.
Sheila Murphy,
Yes.
Amy Bond,
Yes.
Wileen Pangle,
Yes.
Dana Calkins,
Yes. Thank you for your service, Kathy.
Jessica Jurgen, Courtney Stegman, and Tim Odekirk, yes. And thank you very much for your service.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And that's a unanimous pass. Next is donations for Ganyard and Fancher Elementary.
Yep, we have 2 donations this evening that we're asking you would accept from Whitetails Unlimited, the Isabella County chapter. They have donated $500 each to Fancher Elementary and to Ganyard Elementary to support the students there. So we're asking that you accept the donation, the 2 donations from Whitetails Unlimited.
So moved.
Second?
So Sheila and then Wileen. Tim, if you could do roll call?
Sheila Murphy,
Yes.
Wileen Pangle,
Yes.
Amy Bond,
Yes.
Dana Calkins,
Yes.
Jessica Jurgen, Courtney Stegman, Tim Odekirk, yes. And thank you. That's awesome from that organization.
Absolutely, thank you. So that's a unanimous pass. Next are the student reinstatement recommendations.
So the first student reinstatement recommendation that we have this evening is for student S3 2019-2020. That student met with the reinstatement committee on Wednesday, March 24th. You do have a recommendation with a little bit more information in your board packet. We're asking this evening that you grant readmission to student S3 to the WAY program online only, effective tomorrow, April 6, 2021. And both Dana and Sheila served on those reinstatement meetings. So if we have questions, they would also be able to help answer.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call?
Sheila Murphy,
Yes.
Amy Bond,
Yes.
Wileen Pangle,
Yes.
Dana Calkins,
Yes.
Jessica Jernigan, Courtney Stegman, Tim Odekirk, yes.
Unanimously passes. Next is the student reinstatement recommendation for student S4.
So we also met that day with student S4 2019-2020. And that information is in your board packet this evening as well. Although the situation is slightly different, our student reinstatement committee is recommending that student S4 be permitted to return to Mount Pleasant Middle School. And we'd like to have a school counselor there, have the discussion with the student and her family to determine if the Oilers Online program or the face-to-face programs offered at Mount Pleasant Middle School would fit best. But our reinstatement committee recommends that the student be allowed to return to Mount Pleasant Middle School.
So moved.
Second?
Tim and then Wileen. Tim, go ahead and do roll call?
Sheila Murphy,
Yes.
Amy Bond,
Yes.
Wileen Pangle,
Yes.
Dana Calkins,
Yes.
Jessica Jernigan, Courtney Stegman, and Tim Odekirk, yes.
That unanimously passes. Thank you very much, Tim. Next is the MPEA LOA ratification for 21-22 calendar.
Yeah, this is very exciting for us to bring to you this evening. You have in your board packet a letter of agreement that ratifies the 2021-2022 school calendar. So I believe it was a couple board meetings ago where we talked about, what does fall look like. From our perspective, this is the starting point to say, okay, now we have a calendar established for our balanced calendar and our traditional calendar programs. And how do we take that and adapt to what's happening in the world around us? So we worked very closely with the members of the MPEA bargaining team to put together this calendar that is fairly similar to this year's calendar. The way the year lays out, it really isn't all that different. But we're excited to be able to bring this to you this evening. If it's ratified this evening, we will then turn right around and begin sharing it with our families so that they can make plans for the next school year.
Thank you. Is there a motion to pass the calendar?
Can we talk about it just for a few minutes before? Is there, it seemed like we were starting earlier, but then like if I lined it up, we're starting at the same time as CMU this year. And so it seems like that's something we haven't done before, which I love, don't get me wrong, but is there any other changes that we should briefly highlight?
No, so this calendar is actually, it mirrors the calendar that we had originally intended for the 2021 school year.
That's right, I remember it got delayed.
But we delayed it because of the pandemic. So when we passed this calendar, I don't know if COVID had really even started to impact our day-to-day lives yet, but the idea being that we would like to be able to get school days in prior to the Labor Day weekend and still meet those requirements that the state sets aside, where we still have to have a 4-day weekend at Labor Day and that sort of thing. So just the way the calendar falls, we're able to do that. So the Balanced Calendar program starts that first week. I believe that's August 4th. And then we start, like you said, the same week in August, which is August 23rd. So it just allows us to get a little bit more school in prior to the Labor Day weekend.
Thank you.
Mhm,
Jen, just because of the year we've had,
mhm.
how is remediation factored in? I mean, is that going to be a whole separate issue that's going to come about? Or,
Yep.
I guess I just see that we've lost so much this year, and it just, I don't even know how you contend with going forward when we haven't even figured out how to fix what we've already broken. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's a really great point. One of the interesting conversations we had with the MPEA bargaining team is that we have to have something to start with to be able to adjust, right? So if we don't have this basic framework, then we don't know where we can fill in, whether that's back to school boot camps, remediation, extra supports for at-risk students. Are we going to try to fill those things in August? Are we going to put things in June? Probably the one summer school program that we know we have a good sense of the format is at Mount Pleasant High School. They've run a successful program that's been focused on credit recovery. And so they plan to do that again in July, and that may go a little bit more into August. But as I mentioned to you all in our weekly update, just before break, we surveyed our staff to determine who is willing and interested in doing any sort of summer work. And we have a survey ready to go out to our parents, asking them, what they want, so that we can try to piece this together. So I think this is the first step, to have this calendar together and then figure out what supports we need to front load prior to August 23rd or for the Balanced Calendar program. So I think we also have to be sensitive that this year has been really hard for everyone. It's been hard for our teachers, for our staff. It's been hard for our students, for our families. So where do we take that break? Do we walk away in June and come back in July, or what meets the needs of our parents the most? So the state of Michigan is offering funding for summer school programs. That's 5 days a week over the summer, which I don't know that that's realistic for our families. It's an 8-week program, 5 days a week. And I don't know that that's realistic for our families or our students, but that's why we need to survey our families and find out what they want.
Okay, thank you.
Is the funding that's available for remediation covering things like the summer booklets that get sent to students? Because I know some of them are not free. And some of the parents know this format quite well. So I didn't know if we could alleviate some of the costs and offer them more broadly.
Yep. So we do plan to offer some take-home activities for families throughout the summer, along the lines of the workbooks that you're speaking of. That particular funding from MDE would not apply to that, because it does have to be an in-person 8-week-long program. But there are some other options for us. And so that's why once we get a better sense of what our community wants, we'll be able to combine that with what our teachers are able to do and put a program together.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if there's no further discussion, is anybody willing to make a motion to accept the calendar as is?
So moved.
Second.
That's Tim, and then Wheeleen. Tim, if you can do roll call.
Sheila Murphy,
Yes.
Amy Bond,
Yes.
Wileen Pangle,
Yes.
Dana Calkins,
Yes.
Jessica Jernigan, Courtney Stegman, Timothy Kirk, yes.
Okay, so that passes unanimously. Next is the citizens' request to address the board on any agenda or non-agenda item.
Yep. So I will help you with this process, Amy. So again, for our community members that have joined us this evening, if you would like to make comment to the board, if you will please raise your virtual hand, I will be able to unmute your microphone and you will be able to speak. So, Amy, are you there?
Yes, I am.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. I am just wanting to express some concern. I have two students that are currently enrolled in Oilers Online. We have done Oilers Online the entire time and been happy with the program. We were notified towards mid-March that both of our students would be required to complete standardized testing. We have one in the high school and one in the middle school. We've been told through the middle school, fortunately, that they are going to make some special arrangements because our son is medically vulnerable. So they're going to work with us on his testing towards the end of April. However, the high school, I'm concerned about. With the numbers going up in the community, you're bringing in students, which I understand they're going to use Wednesdays when most of the group isn't there for some of the testing, but the juniors, which I have one, are required to come in on Tuesday and Wednesday for standardized testing. Here we have worked extremely hard to keep our family safe. We just had our son spend 4 days in McLaren on medical issues. And now I have to send him in to complete this testing. I'm hoping if the numbers are going up, the administration will take this into consideration and if possible, delay this testing until it is safer for families like ours. We would appreciate that consideration. We understand the importance of the testing and the need for the testing, but at this point, we are not comfortable sending our children in to the public school. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Bree, are you there?
Hey, Jennifer, I'm here. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Go.
Yeah.
Bree, you're cutting in and out. Can you hear me now?
Okay. First of all, but I want to first say thank you yourself for having that meeting with Jennifer. Are you there? Hey, can you hear me? Jennifer?
Yeah, we
Yes.
can hear you now.
Okay,
Yeah, you were in and out, so you may have to start over.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so in regards to the last speaker, with the testing with students, I know that many of you know where I stand. This is wrong in so many ways, but I just listened to Jim Conway talk to the middle school volleyball teams about the testing, and I'm a little concerned of the certifications with those that are going to be testing the students. My understanding is that there might be some CMU students that will be there to help with the testing of the antigen tests that we already know have like 35% accuracy rate on them. But I'm curious if the parents are going to be provided with a list of the people that will be testing the students, as well as certifications that we can see that those persons have also received that will be testing our students with an antigen test that's only 35% accurate. So like I said, that was kind of bouncing off from what she said. And I want to commend you for talking about going back to in-person meetings. I think that's very important. And as I understand, some people may want to take extra precautions for themselves. I think that we always need to remember there are people on the other side who we're not worried about staying away from each other and Zooming. And we would like to have those in-person meetings and mentally be able to do the things that we should do to keep our public healthy. And if some people, like I said, prefer not to do that, just as in-person learning to not in-person learning, I think those are choices that need to be left open. But I think that getting back to face-to-face meetings, however they need to be worked out so that we can do it safely, I think that's important to do because we need to be inclusive to everybody, not just those that have the worry and the fear. So in regards to that, I think that as we're hearing the case numbers that are increasing, I get that. I also get the more we test and the more we offer to do these tests, the more the case numbers are going to increase. You know, I don't know how far anybody has looked into this and how deeply anybody has looked into it, but the survival rates of the people that are affected most by this virus are exponentially great that anybody, even according to the WHO, right, the World Health Organization, you're going to survive this and come out on top. When you look at the death rates, which is tragic by all means, you're talking almost 60% of the people that have passed away have already extended basically the average life expectancy, which is sad and tragic. But when you're applying this in the case numbers to the high school scenario in the groups of people that are in there, it's not even really anything that needs to be alarming in regards to not having a recovery rate. So I hope that what we don't see is that we don't see our schools shut down. The WHO themselves, in one of their press briefings, talked about the importance of education, and our youth should not have to sacrifice their education in order to protect those that are highly vulnerable. You know, and even in regards to the cases and how Mount Pleasant Schools is going to offer all of this testing, I don't know how many of you are biologists, but this is really basic information. If there is anybody out there, this epidemic is the one epidemic ever that has been counted strictly by the case count. And if you're not sure of what that means, as long as we have cases, we're still going to be able to say that we have an epidemic. If you look at influenza, there are 3 factors that are included when you want to consider an epidemic. So as a school, the more that we offer these tests, guess what? The more probably positive tests that we're going to have, especially when we're using a test that's only 35% accurate. And as a school, being that we're now testing athletes, I do want to say I'm highly disappointed that the district themselves, like many other districts across the state, did not step up and say, as a district, that this is not acceptable. And I understand that you all want to follow the rules, but it is not acceptable. It is unlawful. The CDC says that it is. Other states have said that it is. And for some reason, our district just seems to go right along with it. And we're going to follow the rules and we're going to do this. This is not okay. And I'm highly, highly disappointed that especially our athletes now have to undergo this. Having a daughter myself that's the top distance runner on the track team, guess what she's not doing? She's not testing. There's a bigger picture here. It's not going to happen. She will not be tested. And I assure you, nobody will stick something up her nose, not even herself, to participate in this. So I'm going to hope and pray that with the lawsuit with Let Them Play and other lawsuits that have been filed, that something happens very quickly. But as a district, I ask that I know where several of you stand on this, that we realize we don't just have to agree with the rules and mandates that are taking place and it's still acceptable as a district to say, you know what, our schools are not high risk. This is not acceptable and we don't agree, because I see not just the parents that are upset, but I can see all of the extra work and effort that all of you have had to put in for something that shouldn't be taking place regardless. So thank you for letting me say all of that. As always, I appreciate it. And thank you all for doing everything that you do.
Thank you, Bree. Jennifer, are you there?
I am.
Yep, go ahead. We can hear you.
Great. I wrote to the board an email late this afternoon. I'm not sure if you all had a chance to read it. I present a pretty different perspective than what we just heard from the former speaker. The data are very clear about what is going on in our state. The positivity rate exceeds anything we've seen in our state since early December. We have not had cases this high. I think the board is smart enough to know that, that this is a serious virus. You all know that lots of people have died of all ages. And even if people don't die, and even if they're not hospitalized, people get very sick. And at this point of the school year, getting very sick is really problematic, especially to the juniors. I also have a junior. They have the SAT next week. They have AP tests, like 4 of them that I've paid $400 for, that they've studied all year to take. For a student to get sick at this point is really going to be a huge setback, and it's going to be actually impossible to recover from in many regards, especially those AP tests. And so anything that our district can do to keep our students safe and healthy so they can finish this academic year as best as possible is what is warranted. And I'm really disappointed that there was no discussion tonight about perhaps the pros and cons of considering scaling back to 2 days a week. I understand the importance of school. That's why I'm speaking tonight. Education, I'm an educator. Education is the most important thing to me. And face-to-face school is the best way for students to learn. But if we somewhat proactively scale back a little bit from the high-risk activity that's occurring in the high school in particular right now, because we do not have the spacing that the CDC requires when you are a high transmission county, I just don't understand the reasoning. I don't understand shutting down the discussion to even make this consideration if we should go back to 2 days a week temporarily so that we can keep everybody safe. I'm very, very disappointed. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Is there any other community member that would like to make a comment this evening for the board? I'll give you another minute if there is anyone that would like to raise their virtual hand to make comment to the board this evening. I don't have any other hands, Amy. Oh.
Thank you. All right, so next is the Board of Education discussion. This is an opportunity for any board member to discuss an issue or a concern that they might have.
There was a late hand. Is it too late to let that person talk? Or maybe it went away.
I'm sorry, Wheeling, I didn't see a hand. If there is someone else who would like to make comment, or I mean, we can go back. I'm not seeing anyone on my end. Do you all have someone's hand who's raised?
I did, but then it went away, so that's all right. Sorry about that.
Okay, sorry. I'm sorry if we missed somebody.
Okay. Was there anybody that had anything they wanted to discuss tonight?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and we met with Bree a week or so ago, well before spring break. And an issue, I thought she brought up a suggestion that I personally like, having no kids and not being in the school system anymore, was a fact of having parent groups that would meet aside from the board to discuss these issues and maybe bring recommendations or that type of thing. My thought process was we already have PTAs, you know, possibly they could do it. I don't think it's a board driven. I think it should be a parent driven concept, but these discussions, and I think this really came about when we did the third trimester and we didn't have any feedback from the parents. And I think that threw a big thing up. So maybe it would be smart. There's a lot of issues coming up besides just COVID, this testing issue, that I think we need to encourage parents to have the discussions and then maybe make recommendations to the board that way, where it's not, I know we're elected by them and that type of thing, but I think a lot of people are starting to feel like they're not being heard, or they're not getting all the information they'd like to get, or maybe they can't hit these meetings and get, you know, partial information. So it was just something that she was throwing out there and we were kind of considering, and it maybe there's some way that we can encourage parents to have these discussions. And if it's the schools that are having discussions, you know, via a PTA, then they'd be discussing the issues that mean the most to them, that type of thing. That was just something that we threw out and was wondering, she was wondering, or we were wondering, how viable is something like that? And again, this wouldn't be anything that would be led by the board because I don't think it should be, but possibly a board member could attend and hear it if they were invited, something along that line. So that was just something that was thrown out there. And the other thing I guess I did have questions for were, I've been hearing off and on from different sources that there was questions about this testing being done for all the athletes every day. And that there was a parent group that was taking it as, or suing to have it stopped. Has anybody heard anything on that? Because I have not heard anything updated.
So student athletes are not being required to be tested every day per the most recent MDHHS ruling or executive order, epidemic order, I should say is what it's called. Student athletes between the ages of 13 and 19 are required to be tested once a week if they're in competitions or practice. There is a lawsuit that's pending. That's the Let Them Play organization that has filed suit, my understanding, against MDHHS. But until that goes anywhere, we do have to comply. Trune has told us multiple times that epidemic orders from MDHHS are binding, and there are penalties if we do not comply with that. So the athletes have to be tested once in a 1 week period. So the first period began last Friday, April 2nd. So between last Friday and this upcoming Thursday, any athlete that's in practice or competition has to have a rapid test. It's the same test we use for our wrestlers. So our wrestlers had to do that all the way through the season because they competed without masks on. This has been expanded to every sport, both through schools and through community organizations. Any student 13 to 19 that has to be tested once a week.
And this is not something as a board or as a school district that we can refuse to do. I mean, it's what we're told to do. And I hear Bree saying that, you know, we just are going to follow the rules without any stance. And as much as I hear what she's saying, we don't have that option.
Actually, you do, because Sandusky, Claire, there's been a number of school districts who have opted out. However, what you're saying is there are repercussions to doing that, correct? And do we know what those are?
Right. So Sheila, let's be careful. To the best of my knowledge, those districts are not opting out of testing. They've released public letters saying they're opposed to it.
Oh, okay.
We've been a part of correspondence from the Saginaw Valley League. I've spoken directly to our representatives from this area to let them know that we are not in favor of this testing, but schools are not opting out of testing. If you opt out of it, there are financial penalties, plus you don't get to compete. So you lose the ability to compete in any sport, in any program, if you're not following this epidemic order. So while I understand that there are people that definitely don't want this to happen to their children, I also know that there are people that are saying, and this is what we have to do so that my child can compete in sport XYZ, then we're going to do it. So I have seen the letters from different athletic associations, from different school districts that have come out. And I think that's what Bree is saying, is that she's disappointed that we haven't sent out a letter like that ourselves. I've made personal contact with legislatures to let them know how we feel, but we've not sent out a letter like that. So the Claire statement, I believe there was an article. Yeah. And that was a statement that they posted on social media saying that they were opposed to the testing, but to the best of my knowledge, they are still testing their students.
Okay. And the other question is, could you address how they are being tested and who is testing them? So that gets cleared up as well?
Yep. So we have a certified athletic trainer that our certified athletic trainer has been doing the testing for all of our student athletes all the way through. And so she will continue to do that. So she is a certified medical technician. We are also looking into the possibility of partnering with Isabella Citizens for Health so that their providers could test our students, just because of the number. And that's not worked out yet with it being the first week that we have to do the testing. But Mr. Conway is meeting with parents and getting that all set up so that it'll be our certified trainers that will be doing that.
And then could you let people know who's paying for the test and the efficacy of the test?
Yeah, so I can't speak to the efficacy of the test, and that might be something that if someone else wanted to share with that. So the tests are being provided to us at no cost from the state of Michigan. And so I could have Mr. Conway bring a test to our next board meeting if you want to see it, and we could play around with it. We've done that a couple of different times just to look at it, but it's basically just like Amy described. You swab, you put it back in a pack, you drop a serum on it, you put it together, and the line moves up, and if it moves up high enough, then it's positive, and if it moves down, it's not positive. So with those tests from our pop-up testing that we offer, just we simply offer that as a location for our community. We really have nothing to do with that aside from saying, here's our parking lot. With those tests, if something didn't line up, for example, if someone that's asymptomatic, hasn't been exposed, feels fine, tests positive, then they would do the longer 3-day test to determine if someone is actually positive. At the same time, someone that is incredibly symptomatic, if they were to test negative and it doesn't make sense, then they're also going to send them for the more comprehensive test. So, and I can't speak to percentages of, false negative, false positive. I'm not versed enough in that to make those statements.
Thank you.
Is there anything else that anybody wanted to say?
Yeah, Amy, I'm going to go back to Sheila's initial question about bringing up us having different parent groups meeting. I, for one, am in favor of that because I think oftentimes the people that feel more comfortable speaking will come to us, and it's hard to know, not that I doubt that what's coming our way is valid or not, but to know that we're getting information that represents our whole community, all of our constituents, our stakeholders, is really important. And however we can facilitate that, I'm in favor. And I will do whatever I can do to help this situation. I think it's a good idea. Certainly couldn't hurt, but I think it's really difficult and you're right, Jennifer, I think people feel as though, right or wrong, feel as though they're not being heard. So the more avenues we can take to ensure that if you would like to express your feelings, to get the information out, I'm in favor of. And like I said, I'll attend every one of them if need be, but I think it's a valid request.
To add to a sorry, Amy.
No, go ahead, Eileen. Sorry.
I think what I like about it is that I do think it's a little intimidating to come to a board meeting, to turn on the mic and talk. And you might self-select certain individuals over other. And what I like about this venue or this idea is that people are probably more comfortable talking among peers with parents they know, and maybe that might be a discussion that might be a little bit different than what we might get. However, it might be tricky to organize. I mean, I've been to these PTO meetings, and if you have, they're usually highly underattended. And so anything we can do to, increase and maybe let everyone know, like, we're listening, we want to hear these things. However they come to us, whether someone writes to me or comes to a meeting and talk or goes to, something like this that we can organize.
Along the parents' meetings, I also wanted just to encourage the public to understand that there's multitude of ways that they can connect with the district. It doesn't have to be at a school board meeting. Jen mentioned the surveys that go out, answer the surveys. You can talk to your classroom teacher and talk about ideas and ask them to pass it up. Building administrators, school board members. You can call the central office and talk to Jen. So there's many avenues that are available. Don't think that coming to the school board is the only way to communicate to the board. And a lot of that information we do get. So everyone understand there's multiple ways to do it. Find the way that feels most comfortable with you. You know, if it is talking to your teacher, use the teacher. And I know the teachers often bubble that up and we tend to get that information too. So look to what makes you feel comfortable, but parent organizations are great. They tend to be another avenue that could be an avenue that some people could really appreciate and like. And I would like to encourage them to do that, whether it's building or grade or a community, you know, an area, a school building. Getting the parents involved is always a great thing. We're always encouraging that. And so I would encourage if there's a group that would like to get together, or a specific cause, I would encourage them to get together, but also know there are many ways to reach to us and communicate, and we're all very open. Myers grocery store, Shell gas station, parents are always coming and talking and asking and giving opinions and thoughts. And so it's all open and we are all welcome. That's why we do this. And so find the avenue that works best with you. Sending an email, a text. There's many ways to do it. And so I'd like to encourage everyone to find the way they like the best and to leverage that.
I would agree with that as well. With all of those things, I think we're all very approachable and definitely want to know what's going on in the district and how parents are feeling. I mean, especially recognizing that there are a lot of differing opinions. Even listening to public comment, those comments were as different could be. And so I think a lot of people are feeling a lot of different things. And so it's important that everybody is heard, no matter what their take is on how it's going. And so we hear those issues pertaining to kind of the repercussions of what is happening with everything in the district. So I think that SATs, the standardized testing and things like that, those are things that are going to play into the end of the year. And I know that there are a lot of parents out there that are feeling nervous or overwhelmed with the rising numbers and things that are happening. And then there are also other people that might want to take those risks and feel that it's important that we do so. So I certainly like the idea of what Sheila had mentioned of potentially having them led by non-board and then having board members invited or attending and things like that, but it may be not necessarily directly being led specifically by us. But I'm also wondering if maybe we could make this an item on the agenda next time as well. So maybe we think of this as our first way through it. We've all heard and know that this is something that the community wants. And then we could address it again in 2 weeks after everybody gets a little bit of time to think about it, maybe think of some creative ways that could happen. But I'm open to whatever anybody else has to say about that too.
The other thing, having been PTO, PTA, this was never something, or we were never, this kind of thing was never discussed. It was always about fundraising or this type of thing. So I think it would have to be, the board would almost have to bring up issues that we'd like to get their feedback on. Not say, hey, but here's some things that are coming up that you guys might want to talk about, and vice versa. They could bring things up too. But I think a lot of people don't know what issues are coming up, and then because they don't pay attention, and then boom, something happens and everybody blows up, or they're not happy, or why did you do this? Where if we kind of bring some of the issues forward, or they bring things that they're worried about or see, I think that would be phenomenal. But we're going to have to change that culture in the parent organization in order to ask them to do that. That's the only thing I see the board having to do with it. And then if they want somebody there, then it's up to them to invite us.
Sheila, say more about that. I'm not sure I'm tracking with you about the format. what you were saying with that.
Well, so many parents, I mean, they're busy with their day-to-day lives. They don't know some of the things that we're discussing, or, I mean, not so much this year as before, but they don't realize curriculum issues that are coming up, or, things that are being discussed and that type of thing. I think maybe if as a board or as an administration, we present them with, here are some things that are coming up that, being raised, or the curriculum committee could even bring something up that, this is the kind of thing, get some feedback from the parents if they're interested at all in it or not. I mean, they may not care, but there may be some people out there who do, but I think we need to give them some ideas of what's coming up that we'd like feedback on. And then obviously there's going to be things that they want to discuss that we might not think anything about. But I think we would have to encourage, if we go through the PTAs or the school groups, we would have to encourage that. And we would kind of have to help them jumpstart it, to give them some ideas of things that they might want to discuss. Not lead it, but, say, hey, we have a curriculum coming up, some ideas in the curriculum that maybe you might want, or something about reopening schools, all right, or the sports thing, anything that they have issues with that they want to bring to us. We may not be able to do anything about it, or we may actually say, okay, there's an overwhelming, question about this, so maybe it would give us the power, maybe we'd see things that we're not right now. I think it would just give more voice to more people. And if they didn't have to come and speak to us, but could speak to their friends, and then have somebody come and speak on behalf of them, it might work a little better.
So what I'm wondering, if we want to go through the PTA route, I guess, because what I'm just thinking is, so the SAT issue wouldn't really be an issue at anything other than the high school level. So maybe the PTA at the high school might want to set up a forum specific to that issue, or if there's another issue that's hitting at the elementary level, then that's one that the elementaries would be able to kind of hold. So I think what I hear you saying is, if we're able to let them know what's coming up on the agenda, that they can then kind of say, okay, this might be something we want to have a further discussion as parents about at this level, because this is what's important to us. Letting them decide kind of what's important, but they have to know what we're going to be talking about, so they can determine whether they want to have that discussion about it. Am I understanding that correctly, Sheila?
Well, that's just one idea. I'm just sitting there trying to think, but because you're right. I mean, the issues are going to be different at every level, and it may not be PTA. It may be just a group in that school, or maybe the PTA might want to organize it and have a group that does it. But I think then you're getting to issues that mean something to them.
Sure.
Rather than, it's like you said, the SAT issue is going to be important to high school people, but somebody, and so it would possibly get more involvement because it'd be more personal.
I think we're going to have to be very careful. It feels a little bit like a slippery slope. And what I mean by that is, there's going to be issues that we would only be able to be giving information about. There are things that we can't change. And whether it's SAT, the things that we talked about, those are things that we would only be able to give information about. And we're going to have to make sure that people don't come to those meetings thinking that they can influence us to change things that we really have no control over, whether it's a state mandate or with SAT.
Okay, but at least you know that they have concerns. Okay,
sure.
So then that opens up the avenue that we see that this is a concern. We hear it, and this is why we can't do anything, or this is, this is what's within our control and what's not within our control. But at least then you've acknowledged, I mean, we all know we can't do anything about it, but they don't. So they're all out there talking about it and getting upset about it and thinking they don't care. When if you bring it up and you say, yeah, I understand you're not happy about it. I understand, but this is why we can't do anything about it. Then we've opened communication, and they don't think that, because we've all been in this for so long, and you guys make assumptions that everybody knows what you know. I mean, I remember my first year on the board, it was like, oh my God, what is this? What is that? I mean, bless Tim's heart. He babysat me through a lot of it. But we just assume that everybody knows that, and they don't. They don't know half of what you know.
I completely agree. I guess in my mind, I was thinking things like our return to school or return to face, to hear that kind of information from people. I think it's great. I think it's awesome. Not that we don't want to hear all the information. I just I don't want for people to come to us thinking that we can change something that we really can't. I'm all for hearing the information and saying, here is the game plan. Here's why this can't happen, why it can't happen. We agree, we disagree, but this is a mandate coming to us. But to hear people's voices about return to school, those things that we as a board have some influence on, or at least can speak our mind based on what we're hearing from parents, I think the more information we get, the better. I don't want to waste people's time. I think that some of the decisions that the decisions that we're having to make with respect to COVID, it's a no-win. It really is a no-win. We're kind of caught in the middle. We see both sides of it. Our friends are giving us information from both sides. We want to make sure that we're representing our constituency well. And so the more information we can get, the more available we are to hear and discuss. I'm all for that. I just want to make sure that we are not giving a false indicator of what those meetings are about.
And I think, Dana, that could be solved easily by being invited, right? We could share that and make that transition a little easier, because it would be easy if one of us is in the room to let them know, we can't do anything about this and here's why.
Sure.
And so that open invitation, that we could really open a really nice dialogue like this.
Yeah, I'm all for that. Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, is there anything else to be said about that, or anything else?
I have a comment on a different topic.
Sure, Tim, go ahead.
This is regarding Senate Bill number 218. This is a bill that's being proposed and is in committee from Senators Tice, Bartlett, Runstead, Victory, Bumstead, Bison, Bailey, Nesbitt, Lasada, McDonald, Zorn, and Vanderwall, and most importantly, Rick Ottman, who is our senator. This is a law that they're proposing to change the revised school code to prevent students from performing or taking part in athletics if they do not align to their birth certificate's gender. I think this is a very dark law, and I am very disappointed in Senator Ottman for advocating for this law. It goes against our vision of our district. Our vision of our district is to create an inclusive school community of engaged, inspired, and empowered learners. And this specifically is against that. This is a way to determine certain populations get certain benefits for irrational determined ways. It does not allow for the community and or the school district to support the students and to create that inclusive community. I think it is a beginning of rooting more invasiveness from this Senate, from these senators, I'm going to make the assumption, including Mr. Ottman, of trying to destroy our inclusive community that we work very hard at. And so I would like to encourage anyone to contact Mr. Outman and say that you are against Senate Bill number 218, which is the gender determination of athletics based on your birth certificate, and that we feel that's against our community's beliefs and vision of what we want in our community, and it should not be allowed to move forward.
Can we do anything as a district to, or as a board, I should say, as a board to oppose this besides writing to our representative?
I'd like to encourage all board members to reach out to our senator, but also reach out to our state representative, because it will have to go through both committees before it gets voted on. There's that whole process. I think that is the most effective way for us to show that it is against what the district and our community stands for. And we are disappointed that he's showing the darkness of his heart in this activity. And so I think that'll be the most effective is board members and community members who stand up. So the question is, should the board do a statement much like we did for the mid-Michigan election that is coming up for the inclusion into the district? Traditionally, the district and the board has not made policy statements regarding things such as this modification of the law. We've chosen to take the path of individual instead of the district of moving forward. So traditionally, we have not done that. I think maybe in all of the years I've been on, I don't think we've ever, as a board or as a district, made statements on the proposal of specific laws that affect the district, such as this. We've always relied on the board members and the community members to step up. Much like our prior communication, letting everyone know that it's a potential, that it is coming out is, I felt is part of my responsibility as a board member. But I also wanted to share my personal disappointment in our senator for advocating for inclusiveness into our district and making, I don't want the state to feel that our community is supporting this and that he's moving forward. It's counter to what we stand for.
Okay, on the flip side of that, I have no problem, aside from this reason that they're doing this is to protect Title IX and the girls from having unfair advantages by transgender, people who are male and have had all those advantages of having, the biological advantages of being male competing against women, which are our girls, which then, so you're going to have somebody who has that advantage who's going to supplant somebody, who was born female. That's the rationale. They're trying to defend women's rights, and they're trying to defend Title IX. And I don't think that there is anything that was, I don't think they were trying to be mean or demean anyone. I think what they're trying to do is protect the Title IX that we fought so hard for our girls to compete at a level with other girls, and then to have this ability for people who have biologically superior attributes to compete and possibly, kick somebody out who would have gotten a scholarship or been able to compete that now can't. And I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to want for our girls. So not all support on this one.
I feel that Title IX is pretty strong independently as it is. And I'm also a big advocate that that's a parent and a child in a school district conversation to have. But also on the flip side, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a protections of female athletics, because as we've all heard recently, there's been several female kickers on male football teams. And that would be prevented also, because that does not align to the gender alignment. So I think it's narrow-minded. I think that Title IX and the spirit and the community and the parents and the conversation they're going to have anyways with the athletes, whether it is a transgender male who wants to play softball, or whether it's a female soccer player who wants to be the kicker for the football team. That's a conversation that needs to happen in the community, and it's not a state law to make the determination that we can only look at the birth certificate and nothing else. That's just my feeling, and that's what I wanted to share.
No, and I really appreciate you, Tim, bringing this up. I was actually going to ask for it to be on the agenda next time, so it works really well. But I think it's really important for everyone to be aware of the bill and the restriction that it brings. And as Tim said, when you read the language, it's very narrow-minded and would kind of undo what we're trying to do here. And so I urge all of you to check it out, look at the language, and as Tim, is saying, write if you feel strongly about it. So
and also, just so you know, it is very short. It is literally 15 lines. So it's a very short bill. It's actually one of the shortest ones I think I've ever seen.
I think that when bills like this have come along, we respond out of fear, right? We don't have a lot of information about, truly, what percentage are we going to see of kids wanting to compete? And that doesn't really matter. But some of the, as I've talked to people in the athletic community, I'm hearing two different sides. Like people saying that they see that being an injury waiting to happen. And I'll address that one to start with. Before Title IX, the issue was women can't compete in sports because they're the weaker sex. Certainly we don't want to see them sweat. They're going to get hurt because they don't have the stamina, the capacity, whatever it might be. And that's one thing that I'm hearing come back in history to say women are not able to compete with men. Well, as a former athlete, that's how I got better, is competing with my brother and all the boys on the block. Now, whether I agree that I think any bill that comes by that is exclusive rather than inclusive, I have a problem with. And whether we as a board want to make a statement, I don't know if that's in our purview. But at the same time, as you said, Tim, we are not about exclusivity. We should be about inclusivity and embracing our population, embracing our students more than anything. That's what we're in this business about as kids. So let's embrace it. And the other issues, we can work with that when we really see this being put into play. No pun intended.
Okay, is there anything else we want to address tonight? Okay, not seeing anything. I'm going to say that I think we all have a lot to think about. And I'm sure that we will kind of all be doing that long after we log off tonight. But I want to thank everybody for being here tonight, and I'd like to call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.